Order. We're here for a budget hearing this evening. Tonight, Thursday, June 11, 2009. We have two items on the agenda for the budget, Monty Tech and the Fitchburg Public Schools. We will first take Monty Tech, which is page 41. Councilors, you should have also received a copy of the Monty Tech budget here. And we have Superintendent O'Kern to speak with us. Good evening.
Good evening. I'll give a brief presentation, and then whatever questions you have, I will attempt to answer them for you. I'll turn your attention to page 1 of the budget summary. You'll see that the difference between FY 2009 and FY 2010 is $0. There is no increase in our budget. There is an increase in assessments. For some communities, decreases in others, depending on a number of factors, which I'll discuss. Fitchburg is one that has a decrease in assessment of $165,000. Why does that happen? Because next year I'll be here and could tell you there's a 0% budget and your assessment goes up. And this is you are one of the 18 communities that make up our district. I've been to a number of, I think, 14 town meetings to date this fall, and there are some that their I'm explaining, such as an Athol, why their assessment went up $80,000 with when we have no budget increase. For Fitchburg, it's really three factors.
Yep. Just 1 second, I'm sorry. It was my error. I usually read the total amount.
Okay.
It's that. Just so everybody knows. The total budget amount for Monty Tech assessment is $1,707,000. Thank you.
What happened with Fitchburg is, again, no growth in our budget, so that was one thing that certainly helped you, because if there was a growth in a budget and you had reductions in other areas, you still might see an increase. But you did have, your biggest reason, about $117,000, is a shift in assessments to other communities. And how that happened is if you look on page... It's going to be page 5. On page 5, under the operating percentages of the budget, which is our largest budget, we have two budgets, operating and capital, and that's due to the district agreement, and that's how we do different ways to proportion percentage of capital. You had a reduction of 0.6% in operating percentages, which works out to $117,000 for you, and you had that's because there was a decrease in students in Fitchburg, even though it was only 3. There was growth in total enrollment in the school, so some other towns are paying more of the operating budget than Fitchburg. And you can see on that page 5 with that percentage. And you also lost a percentage of capital. You paid 23.5% of capital budget last year. You're going to pay 21.9%. And where you'll see that number in real student numbers on page 3, you had 408 students on October 1st of '07, and you had 405 students on October 1st of '08. So that's what reduced your operating budget, and you had a loss of 455 school-age attending children, which reduced your percentage of capital budget. And how that works, I'm probably repeating myself from last year, but under the district agreement, all these school-age attending children, grades 1 through 12, are added up in all 18 cities and towns, and you can see that comes out to 27,135 students. And why it's grade 1 through 12, and we don't include pre-K or kindergarten, is back when the district started in 1965. The majority of, or just about all the schools did not have kindergarten, public kindergarten at that time, so that's why those numbers are not, it's only grades 1 through 12. And what your percentage is of the 27,135, and in grades 1 through 12 in Fitchburg, you have 5,967 students on October 108. That's the percentage of capital budget you pay, and it also is the percentage of the freshman class that you get to, and that's all outlined in the district agreement. And percentage of freshman class, I believe you have a quota of 84 students for the freshman class, and I don't know the real numbers tonight, but I think you're hovering about close to 100 actually accepted students from Fitchburg to Monty Tech for next year's freshman class. And how that happens is, after June 1st, any available seats that any town did not take or did not fill their quota, then they're available to anybody in the district. So, budget-wise, no different than the city, no different than Fitchburg Public Schools, a 0% increase, and that was used, this budget we put together in time for our March 1st public hearing on our budget. We have to go forward with that early because our town meetings, some start actually in the end of March. So we have to have our numbers early. We used the governor's budget, known as House 1, to build this budget, and we're sitting, we're still waiting for final state numbers like everyone else is, but right now it looks like $600,000 further we're going to need to cut because of cuts to regional transportation and to our Chapter 70 from what the governor's budget is. Still too early to see whether that's what's going to happen. We do have layoffs coming. We've begun to talk to some individual staff members about their plans beyond Monty Tech. It's not pleasant business that we're all going through. How many positions will depend. The first round is 8 positions are going at Monty Tech, and how many will go beyond that. And that's out of a total employee base of a little over 200, about 203 full-time employees. So 8 positions right now, and it could be more depending on what final cuts the numbers are. The commitment from the school is to minimize impact on classroom teachers of core subjects and on our vocational shop, because we don't want to do anything that impacts how many freshmen we can take and minimize impact on class size. So the cuts are either not in core subjects or not in teaching positions for now. So that's, you see what your assessment number is, you see what our budget is. I don't want to, waste your time with a lengthy presentation, but as I said, I'd be happy to answer whatever question you have.
If I could, just one question in relationship to something you said, Mr. Superintendent. On page 5, you're saying that on the transportation and other operating percentages, we went down to the .63, which you indicated is $117,000.
Right.
You then indicated that other towns were paying more than Fitchburg. I want to make
Not
clear
in
that-
dollar
right,
amount.
right, they're not paying more
Not
than
in dollar-
Fitchburg.
no, you
Their
are our
percentage-
largest
their
sender of
percentages-
dollars.
Right, their percentages may have increased, but Fitchburg is still the largest by
Absolutely,
far.
yeah.
Which leads me to my question. Even with that decrease, we're down at 29.96%. What percentage of the students at Monty Tech are from Fitchburg?
I don't know the percentage, but there's 405 students out of 1,300. That's how many are there from Fitchburg.
Okay, so we're in the same ballpark. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to thank the superintendent for inviting members of the council to the school, I don't know, maybe about 6 weeks ago. Several of us went and found it to be very helpful. Of course, it's more helpful when you find out that, our bill is $165,000 less than last year. That helps out a lot, too. But I thought it was a very helpful meeting and appreciated that invitation.
Thanks for coming.
Also wanted to just thank you and the school for the number of projects that are being done in the city of Fitchburg. We have some houses going up on First Street. I know that there are some other projects that are on the drawing table, and we appreciate that. We need that help very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor DiMartino.
How many graduated this year? What was the number in the graduation class?
302.
302. Thank you.
If I could follow up on Councilor Clark's comments, I know that the students at Monty Tech are partnering to help build the stone house at Cogswell Park, and I'd like to extend our thanks for the efforts from, was it the ROTC at the shelter? Joel, was that it?
Yes.
I mean, an incredible effort on the part of those students towards helping Fitchburg.
This week we've been, and it's going to be on Saturday too, we're at Moran Playground, I believe is what it's called. We've already done some brush removal and preparation for pouring a pad for, I think the pad actually got poured already, and then there'll be a big crew out there again on Saturday to work on that, so.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Caddy.
I'm just going to elaborate on that. ROTC has taken over the lower field at Moran's Playground through Paul Genet, who's the sergeant of ROTC, got a grant through Lowe's Home Goods or Home Supply of $10,000. The masonry department, Cordell Balls, poured a pad for a 10 by 12 shed that we're building in Moran's Playground. The pad was poured. They're going to stick build the shed. Paul Genet has been in Moran's Playground all week after school with some of the other teachers from Monty Tech cutting trees. On Saturday, they're probably going to have over 100 people in there chipping and removing the rest of the brush and the trees and recovering the playground equipment that we actually restored 4 years ago with a Boy Scout group. So it's a real big situation with them. I mean, taking care of this field. I mean, we're trying to keep it low profile till we get something done, but I guess it's appropriate to mention it tonight. But it's quite a sight to be seen if you go up there on Saturday. It's quite a sight. During the event at Cogswell about a month and a half ago, tell you a story. Kevin Roy was over in one of the ball fields, and the ball field wasn't going to open this year. But we had a group of people over there cleaning the ball field. Paul Genet was bringing the kids to a week at a Fort Drum for the week, and he decided to bring the kids to Cogswell Park that morning and work the heck out of them for a couple hours so they'd sleep all the way to New York. So they showed up. They started to clean around the lake for me. Kevin Roy called me and said that he needed more help. Just about that time, Paul Genet called me and said, "We're all done with this project. We got another hour. What do you want me to do?" They drove the bus over to Kevin Roy, and in about 20 minutes, I don't know how many kids it was.
86
86 kids, and in about 20 minutes, the entire field was cleaned. The funny story, I didn't know it, but Sergeant Genet told the kids, without me knowing it, that he didn't want the brush to touch the ground. So the kids ran across the ball field, picked up the brush, hand-carried it across the field into a pile, dropped it, and then ran across the ball field and did it again. And this went on for about 15 or 20 minutes. At the end of that time, it was spotless. I'm probably forgetting other things they've done this year. They show up at the cleanups. Without question, they are a wonderful representation of your school. And I've said it before, I wish our school system wouldn't get involved like they do, because they do an awful lot for the city.
Thank you. And we are on First Street with a second house. We built one there last year, and we, in partnership with the Montechusett Enterprise Corporation, with second house, we're in discussions with them to build an additional house next year for them also. So, and those are affordable housing for first-time home buyers, which it's a great experience for our students to build the house. It becomes their classroom. And I don't want to say they're easy houses to build, but before, when we used to use a lottery system and build for a private landowner or homeowner, you know, the houses were upwards to 3,000 square feet. So we're actually building 4 units of housing this year, 1 in Fitchburg, 1 in Templeton, and a duplex in Gardner. And, we're at the point that we're building 4 houses a year. So that's, and we're really excited about working on the Stone House and being part of that project. And Tom Camillo, one of our carpentry instructors, just came back from timber framing school because he had requested to go to that so that he could be better prepared for that particular project. So, and as you said, there's often little things that we'll get a call for to go, and everything from the former power plant on the James River Power Plant was not completely sealed off to vandalism, and our masons went out there and continued blocking it off. And those are what we tell everybody is ask us, and we jokingly say let us say no, but we can't possibly say yes to everything, but let us at least evaluate it and see if we can fit it into our schedule and get our crews out there.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you. I don't know if you can answer this question, but do you have any idea how many kids from Fitchburg are involved in the ROTC program, roughly?
No, I wouldn't know. There are well over 140 students in the Marine Corps Junior ROTC program and growing to the point that they're telling me they need a 3rd instructor, but I don't know that. No.
It's just pretty impressive, like Councilor Caddy said, watching these kids do their work, and I've seen them now for about 3 or 4 years around the city. And to think that a good portion of these kids aren't from Fitchburg, but they're treating it like it is their city, and you see the effort that they put in, and really need to be commended for it. Thank you.
I was at COGS all the morning that they were clearing, and when you remember you're dealing with high school students who can pretty much be undisciplined outside of other. It's amazing how they're working in teams of 5. And they were actually leapfrogging one over the other. If you finished your section, you went over, and they went over the next group, and it became very competitive, and they really did an outstanding. Sometimes I have a hard time believing they're the same kids I see Monday through Friday, but that really is a tribute to the instructors.
It's amazing to watch these kids work, and the discipline. Like you said, high school kids don't have much discipline. These kids were amazing.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Connery.
This doesn't have anything to do with the budget, Mr. Superintendent, but I think we should put a plug in for your Father's Day car show.
Thank you. Yeah.
Father's Day, they have a large car show at Monty Tech, and let's pray for good weather.
Yeah. And we are raffling off a beautifully restored 1972 BMW 2002 is the model. It's this little red sport coupe that Auto Body has spent. It was donated to the school, and Auto Body has spent well over a year. So I don't have any tickets on me, so you're lucky. I'm not going to try and sell you one, but that will be raffled off on Father's Day.
Councilor DiMartino.
Where can we get the tickets?
You can just call the school, or call the school and get a ticket for that. Okay. Thank you very much. And good luck to all of you. This is my 28th year in education, my 6th year as superintendent, and I think probably the most difficult budget year that that we've seen. I mean, I go back long enough in education to be the first year of Proposition 2.5, and I remember what it was like to get a pink slip and all that, and it's not pleasant business, but we're going to try and keep positive and moving forward. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the Fitchburg Public Schools. Good evening, Mr. Superintendent. Come on, come up, so you can pull chairs up. Paula? Okay. Fitchburg Public Schools, budget is $43,300,000. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Mr. President Hay. My name's Jim Reynolds. I'm the Vice Chair of the Fitchburg School Committee. I felt it important to step up before you counselors tonight as we look at the budget to put a face of the school committee to you. I think that the superintendent's done a fine job along with his team in terms of putting the details behind a very large sum of money. And at the same time, I'd also like to express to all of you, to the degree that's possible, that number has obviously come down from last year. We're dealing with some economic realities. I understand that, but if there ever was any opportunity to increase a number, I would say to you, consider the schools. I know that this function doesn't have the ability to add, but at the same time, I would just appeal to your common sense in terms of the schools as being certainly one of the places in the city that would deserve some more funding. Also like to say to the council that we have other school committee members here in an effort to show you our support for this budget, and thank you for your time, and turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Councilors, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the school department budget tonight. I've handed out a couple of things. One is just a summary, which I think is something that gets lost in the shuffle a lot. It's almost like an old shoe. When you wear that shoe all the time, you forget how important it is and how good it fits. But I think the Fitchburg Public Schools are a shoe that fit very well. And, we've been talking about what Fitchburg students have been able to do in other schools. Well, this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about what Fitchburg students do in our schools right here in Fitchburg. And, one of the things that was just talked about a little earlier reminded me of the work that the alternative ed students have done and cleaned up and fixed up the playground right across from the old Goodrich School, and did a good job on that. And then I've just listed some other things. I won't go through them here, but I think oftentimes we get so caught up in funds and budgets and all of the difficulties with the jobs that we do that we forget, the way that our students excel on a regular basis. And I think just looking at our graduation rate in 4 years has gone up from 75% to 82%. Our dropout rate in 4 years from 2004 to 2008 has been cut in more than half, from 9.6 and 4.2. And these are in years where we've done with the minimum amount of money that we have. The number of our AP courses and the ability that our students have had. I don't want to go through all of these, but as I was putting together the budget and as I was thinking about what we would be talking about tonight, I thought that for my sake, it's important for me to remind myself of what we accomplish every day, because it's so easy to get lost in the difficulties. And to echo a little bit of what Superintendent Colquhoun was saying, difficulty and pain is the only way I would describe the last 2 months. On a regular basis, on a daily basis, it has just been one blow after another. And I took some slides from all of the different pieces that I gave you in the budget, and I tried to pick the ones that were, I thought, the most concise in terms of talking about the budget process for the school department. The first slide talks about mission. And you saw it in your handout, the mission being to sustain a comprehensive program, to sustain the core, and to sustain innovation. And I think if you looked, as you look through the slides and look through the budget that was put before you, even though, and I'll look at it a little bit later, even though the funds have been reduced, you'll see that a comprehensive school program has been provided and is being provided for the Fitchburg Public Schools in terms of music, art, drama, sports opportunities, and whatever technical opportunities we're able to provide. We can't build houses and we can't refinish cars, but we can work in technology, and a group of our kids were just featured last week in the newspaper for the work they've done in all of our schools, taking old computers that are thrown away and given to us by businesses and companies, and using their own talent to turn those boxes into usable technology. Sustaining the core. We have an academic program at the high school that I would say rivals most other school systems in Massachusetts. We have 7 AP courses. We have students who excel in those AP courses, and a number of them do so well, if you excel in 3 or more, you get college credit, which as a parent, that's big money, because wherever you go, it means that's something you don't have to take. And then sustaining innovation. On a daily basis, as I look at what goes on and the things that we bring forward, we have one of the few expanded day programs in the Fitchburg Public Schools. There are only about 20 of them in the state, and we have one, where we have a pilot school, an arts pilot school, which is increasing its enrollment by 25%. And we have an alternative ed program that graduated 124 students this past year, and 40% of those are from surrounding communities, who say if your child is a square peg and is not fitting in that round hole, and you want someplace where they're going to go and get excited about education and get their high school diploma, send them to Fitchburg. And a lot of communities do that. And from my point of view, the good thing about it is there's some money that follows. And that alternative program is totally self-sustaining. So we are able to provide an education for our alternative students at no additional cost, because it's covered by the cost of students that are sent to us from as far away as Acton, Boxborough. The district goals, those have been around for as long as I have, 4 years, are focused on academic performance, increasing school attendance. Our attendance rates are posted in all of our schools. And as I walk around, it's 93, it's 94, it's 95. Our attendance rate is excellent. Our kids come to school. If they don't come, we can't educate them. So attendance is the real focus. And then that decreasing the dropout rate. In 4 years, we've cut it in half. That is one of the governor's main focuses for education. And you've heard the president talk about the dropout rate in this country is in some places 50%. And we've cut ours in half with the resources that we have. Parent outreach, collaborative academic administrative team, and building a technology infrastructure. One of the points on point 7 of what we have accomplished in the past 2 years is all of our data now is all electronic. So we're able to track students from school to school. If they move, their academics, we're able to analyze their academics, and all of that is now in place. The slide with the bar graph is, I think, the one that tells the story. And we only took the story back to 2008, but if you look at the first bar, that was the school department budget in 2008, $44,100,000. In this past year, the budget was $46 million. When we put together a strategic plan, which took a whole year and surveyed thousands of people, thousands, students, teachers, parents, that strategic plan is one of the aspects that we use to build a budget. There are districts who are loaded with cash who cannot pull it together to do a strategic plan. And we did it. We did it mainly because it was driven by the school committee, and in particular Tom Russo, but also participated in by everyone else to say, what do we need, where are we going, what do we want for the school district of Fitchburg? If we did that, $51.2 million is what it would cost to actually provide what would be needed to be a fully functioning school system providing what the students need. Then the level service, the purple column, is level service budget, being if we took everything that was in the 46 and added energy cost increases, transportation increases, salary increases through steps or whatever, it would be $49 million. So from that $49 million to get to the 46, which is the blue column, which was the first number that the mayor gave me back in probably February or March, was $46 million. That was a drop of $3 million. So we made $3 million worth of cuts before the budget was even out of the gate. And in that $3 million, there were 20 positions. And then all kinds of other economies of wherever else we could cut the budget. On May 8th, the budget was reduced to 44.3. So from March to May, we had to find an additional reduction in cost from 46 million to 44.3, and then 5 days later, on May 13th, I was told of an additional $1 million that needed to be cut from the budget. So needless to say, other than awards nights, graduations, end-of-year parties, we've spent most of our time in the bunker, trying to figure out how to bring a budget from 46 million to 43.3 and convince the staff, the administrators, and the parents that we were still going to be able to provide a quality education in Fitchburg. The next page shows you where those cuts came from, proportionately. How we did it. How did we make that first? The first number is 1.7 million that needed to be cut. That was the May 8th cut. 565 of that was from stimulus. The stimulus money is coming to us in two payments, $565,000 and $600,000. On May 8th, we only knew about the 565. The 600 wasn't even on the radar. So those two stimulus monies, by law, go directly to the school department. They don't go through the city. So that's part of the 1.7 million. 80,000 is in a facility, closing a portion of a facility. 170,000 was for kindergarten. We had put the 170,000 in the grant, in the budget, because we didn't know if we were going to get the grant. We are going to get the grant, so I was able to now put that city money towards the deficit. 540,000, it would be an anticipated revenue if all employees choose to participate in a 3-day furlough. At this moment, most of the bargaining units and all non-union employees have agreed to a 3-day furlough. And then in green would be salaries that we moved to grants. Now, this is not salaries that are frivolously moved to grants, so I want to clarify that. These are ARRA grants that 50% of them are for restoration and 50% are for reinvestment. So the nature of the grants are to save jobs. So putting that 340,000 in the grants is actually what the ARRA money is intended for. On May 13th is the additional $1 million cut. So again, $600,000 is coming to us from the federal government, well, from the federal to the state, and then to us in stimulus money. 115,000 of that is the purple, is additional staff reduction. 35,000 salaries moved to grants, and then the yellow is our looking at our bus routes. We went back and we analyzed every single one of our bus routes to see if there was some way we could alter our bus routes to consolidate the busing. And we were able to reduce our buses by 5 buses at about $50,000 each. So that's where that extra $250,000 came from. This next is just a summary of the FTE reductions. The first reduction was from that 49 to 46, was the $3 million, and that was a reduction of 20.4 positions. And then the second reduction was an additional 17 positions. So right now, without a furlough, should the furlough not fly, we'll be reducing the school district by 37.4 positions. The next page is just to give you an idea of what is 1 day's furlough. What does that mean? So 1 day's furlough, a day of furlough for all administrators is $12,000. A day of furlough for all the clerical is $8,000. a day of furlough for teachers, and you can read the rest of them, is $150. So a total 1 day's furlough for all the employees in the school, union and non-union, is $179,756. And we're proposing 3 days of furlough. Furlough means you don't work, you don't get paid. So if a teacher's schedule now is 184 days, they will actually only work 181 days and will not get paid for 3 days. That's not how furloughs are everywhere, but that's the furlough process that we're proposing here. And then the next is just to talk a little bit about the stimulus. Although it arrives in a check, it's actually like a grant. You have to justify every expense. There are very clear guidelines as to what you can move into stimulus money. You have to meet those guidelines. You have to spell out why it's being spent, how it's being spent. You have to apply for it like a grant, and then you will be audited. So that everything that's in the 565 and everything that's in the 600 is just as if it was any other grant. So it's not just, here's the money, do as you will with it. So a lot of extra time has gone into actually identifying what is it from the city budget we could move into a grant. Right now, the 600,000, we're moving transportation. But the 565 is going to be all salaries that are going to be moved into that grant. The Title I, there's additional Title I money coming to us. That will also, you have to show what are you going to spend on it. The IDEA is special education. So that also has very strict guidelines. And then there's a little portion of special education. As you know, we have integrated preschools where you have special education and regular education children in the same preschools. That $35,000 can be spent on that. So totally, all of the money that's coming to us from strategic investment is $2.7 million. Now, just as an aside, and I heard this on NPR today, they were talking a lot about it, the state only has $100 million left of all the stimulus money that was given to the state that was supposed to last until 2011. So it's all being spent now, and it's all being spent in FY 2010. So in the end, all that will be left for 2011, FY 2011, is $100 million. And the year's not over yet. On the next page was another cut that we received. The circuit breaker is the money that is given to us from the Department of Education for tuitions that are over a certain amount. Once a tuition at an outside placement gets over a certain amount, the state will reimburse us for 75% of that of what's over the cost. So that amount of money has been reduced from 72% to 42%, which for Fitchburg is an additional cut of $600,000. Then the entitlement grants are the ones that you get based on your profile, your enrollment. You just have to write the application for them. Those are all being reduced, and some of them we don't know if they're going to exist. The competitive grants, we're competing for any one of them we can get. Our expanded day, which right now we have at B.F. Brown and at Academy, that's being reduced to 1 grant here, and we're being told every day, every week, we're very competitive. Fitchburg will receive one of the expanded day grants, which will allow Longeau Middle School to go till 3:45 or 4 o'clock, have that expanded day. And then, who knows whether there are more additional city and state shortfalls around the corner. Every year, every week, we hear what are the new revenues from the state, are they meeting the predictions? We don't know. And then Medicaid is also one of those wild cards that we're not sure. One of the things that has been discussed is, are we putting the district at risk by putting grants in unanticipated revenue? So I want to clarify that. The answer is no. 3 years ago, I started taking salaries out of school choice and out of circuit breaker. lots of salaries had been put into those two accounts to try to balance the budget. They're unanticipated. You don't know what those numbers are going to be. This budget that's before you does not have a single salary in school choice or in circuit breaker. It's not supposed to. But it does have salaries that have been moved into ARRA stimulus grants, because that's what they're for. You can put up to 50% of the salaries in that. If you go over the 50%, you'll be penalized. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. I gave you quite a thick packet with all kinds of information. The slide presentations that I've done, there are 3 different ones. All of this information has been emailed to all of the staff in the schools. So every time, in tonight's presentation, what I'm handing out to you tonight, tomorrow I will email to all of the staff, so that everybody knows what's happening on a daily, weekly basis with the budget. So that's kind of a summary. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, and I'm at your disposal.
Well, I guess I'll start, Mr. Superintendent. On the sheet here where you're showing the May cuts to the budget, and you've got in the green the $340,000, which are salaries to grants.
Yep.
Are those renewable grants next year, or is this a one-time only, and those salaries would need to be picked up next year?
The green are mostly, those are mostly entitlement grants. So those are grants that we get every year.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. How many teaching jobs are being reduced? What's the number?
Right now, the first set of cuts, and those would be, in the slides there, the first set of cuts had, I think, 5 elementary positions, and those were mostly based on reduced enrollment. The second group of cuts, the most recent million, has 6 high school positions, 5 middle school positions. I had originally cut no teachers from the high school when our budget was $46 million. Not a single staff member had been cut from the high school. But from that point on, the budget was cut another $1.7 million. And I had restored, we'd originally cut middle school teachers, but then we had found ways in looking at other parts of the budget to restore those middle school teachers. When we were hit with another $1.7 million, there was no way to do that. So 6 high school, 5 middle school teachers, and originally from the first cuts through, there would have been, was it 4 or 5 elementary? So, yeah, so 8 elementary. 8 elementary.
So total would be 16, 17?
8, 6, 14, and 5, 19.
19,
Yeah,
okay.
19.
How many new positions are being added to this budget?
What?
New positions?
Right now, there were two ETL positions, which are team leaders. Those are special education positions. We've now moved those 2 to a grant. What we've tried to do is look at every possible position that could be saved and that would qualify for a grant. So 2 of the ETL positions have been moved to a grant, and then we added a special education teacher and a para at the Longeau Middle School, because we have 4 autistic students who are going into 5th grade. So we needed to add a special education teacher and a para at 5th grade. In order to address the $1.7 million deficit, we moved those positions into a grant. They used to be in the regular budget.
Are there any administrative jobs that were added?
Right now, the only administrative job that still exists, that's been added to the budget, is the assistant supervisor for maintenance. And without a furlough, that's probably going to disappear.
Okay, one of the frequent questions I get from constituents is, when our student enrollment declines each year, why are the costs going up for education? I mean, we've lost 600 students over the last 3 years, so isn't that...
600?
Well, I saw a chart here that said 2006 we had 5,700, and now we're down to 51?
Well, we have, the cost actually, if you look at the budget, and if you look at that flow chart that I have, the budget actually hasn't been going up. You know, it's heading in the other direction. You know, this
Right, but I mean,
is staying the same, or it's
The costs are going up, and when budget reductions happen, it's always detrimental, but this is the chart I'm actually referring to, enrollment trend.
Refer to which page?
Which is one of the presentations.
It's in the green booklet under,
Under which,
section is FY10 budget PowerPoint. It's the 8th page in.
Yep.
According to this, we're
From 57, and right now the enrollment is 50.
One and change.
Today it was like 52. So it's a change of about 500 students. And we've reduced the number of teachers. What happens is, and here's where you don't get a lot of benefit. Whenever you make staff reductions, it's in the teachers you just hired. So your most costly staff stays as part of your budget, which means that a lot of your expenses don't change. That's what's happening now. And, well, contractually they increase, and your medical benefits have not gone down, and all of your other costs have not stopped. So it's, you know, it's not a proportional thing, and then it depends where those students leave. If you have 2 from one classroom, 2 from the 5th grade, you can't cut a teacher.
May I add
Yep.
something? I think it's also important to add that, you know, even the state recognizes that the cost per pupil rises every single year, to give some recognition that, you know, call it inflation, just call it the cost of living goes up year over year. So when we talk about the grants and the funding that comes, the formulas that the state uses in terms of the funding that comes down to us in the form of Chapter 70 dollars, every year the state revises it, and the reimbursement per pupil also rises. So it's just, my point being that it's just not a Fitchburg budget phenomenon that on a year over year the costs go up. Even the state recognizes that every single year the costs do rise.
Also, just so I have a handle on the numbers here, what is the net school spending requirement for fiscal year 2010?
The gross amount is $55,538,000. That's the gross amount.
So the city and state allocating $43.3 million. Our indirect costs would therefore be the difference between the net school spending number and the 43.3, so at $12 million roughly.
The indirect are about 13.6. That's offset by transportation.
Okay.
We don't get credit for transportation, which is between 3.8 and 4 million. I think you're working on getting it closer to 4.
Closer to 4.
But let me say that the goal of the city and the schools is to be at 100% of net school spending. With the budget cuts, we may be more around 96% or a little lower than that, and if we get below 95%, then the state can withhold some Chapter 70 or some state aid. So we're all aware of that, and we're trying to work together to avoid that problem.
Okay, and,
Marcus, may I just add to your question?
yep,
Inside that 43, there's some, you know, would you say 55 million, round figures?
Yes, 55.
You know, less the 43 would give you 12. The point being that inside that 43, there's some transportation that doesn't count.
okay, so between the city and Chapter 70 contribution, the indirect cost, and the grants of $8.2 million, the total is $65.1 million?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so $65.1 million is being allocated to the schools for those 3 areas. One question I have about,
No. Let me, I think to get to what you're doing, you would take the 55.5 million and just add the transportation.
okay,
No? Well, you get 55.5 less 4 for transportation.
right,
Brings you down to 51.5.
right.
Then subtract 43.3. And what does that give you?
7 million plus.
I think it's more like 55 represents state and local, and then there's some federal grants that come in. If you add state, local, and federal together,
63.
you're at 63.
Okay. One question I have about personnel. How many people do we employ in the schools that handle payroll
The school handled payroll.
payroll functions between maintenance,
One person is responsible for payroll.
okay, and we have the payroll in the treasurer's office. Do they collaborate?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That,
Every day.
But I mean, aside from transferring I mean,
I
okay,
actually run it and print it in my office, and it's checked, and it goes down to the treasurer's office for processing.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Counselor Salamino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Abenel, I'm looking at the budget. Well, first of all, when you mentioned teacher layoffs, and you had mentioned, you gave us the figure as to how many you anticipated with cuts number 1 and 2, and that came out to about 16 teachers. Is that correct? 5 elementary, 6 high school, and then 5 middle school.
Yes.
How many layoffs do you anticipate, and would any of those layoffs be softened by retirements?
Very few are softened by retirements. Half a dozen, maybe? We only have a half a dozen retirements. Now, some of those layoffs will also be, your word, softened by people leaving, moving away. Today, I signed 140 letters, which are all kinds of, for lack of a better term, layoff letters. So when Mr. Culkeen talks about a miserable day, that's a miserable day. Each one of those had a name on them. Some of them were, and what we have to do by contract is we have to actually lay off more people than we need to, because over the next 3 or 4 days, we're going to be figuring out when the music stops, who's sitting in the chair, for lack of a better way of expressing it. Because it's all based on seniority, certification, and a couple of other items. So someone may be in the chair, but when there's a layoff, that person may be the one without a job because someone else will take their job. So then in the other piece that I have done, and I've talked with the union about this, I have made a number of involuntary transfers, about 20. Because each one of the involuntary transfers frees up a job for someone else. So teacher A is certified in what they're doing, and they're also certified in some job that a teacher retired, and they're certified in that job. If I move teacher A to that job now that's open because someone retired, I have somebody on the RIF list who only had certification for the job teacher A was in. So by moving somebody involuntarily, I freed up a job and brought somebody back from unemployment. So that's the kind of thing that the assistant superintendent, the personnel director, and myself have been doing over the past week, seeing if we move people around, how many jobs can we open up to bring some people back from unemployment. The goal will be to actually have as few bodies unemployed as possible, even though we're going to still reduce the number of positions.
But right now, you don't know how many retirements are going to offset the...
We have about 6.
All right, so what if the 16 or 17 people who might lose their job, teachers only?
Yep.
That might be reduced down to...
If they're certified.
11? All right.
If they're certified for that particular job. It's possible that the person retiring, there's not someone certified for that job.
All right.
But that is what the math says.
Okay. And a few more questions. and I don't understand, on line 12, which would be on the revised, on the
That one
munis
page?
budget.
Yeah, the one page.
Right, and that would be under technology. You have $241,000 of salary, and I'm not trying to jump around.
Yep.
But line number 12. And then on line number 8, you have teaching faculty salary of $22 million. Are the technology people also faculty? Or is that $241,000 in addition to the $22 million? Where you have faculty?
It's in addition. All of this is in addition. All of this is separate.
Okay, so the technology, are they faculty or are they not faculty?
They would be non-faculty.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
When B.F. Brown closes and they move to the Longzo Middle School, are there going to be any reduction in positions such as a guidance counselor? Are they going to be able to merge with one or the other? Or are they going to keep?
Yeah. If you
Same
go
amount.
to the
Right, when I read
first,
it, it kind of looked like they were going to...
go to the first PowerPoint presentation, I think I did it backwards, so I started from the back in the old, yeah. While you're looking for it, I can say what it is. We reduced the staff when we closed B.F. Brown by a principal, an assistant principal, 2 secretaries, 2 custodians, and a nurse.
Yep.
And a nurse.
And when I read the...
And a guide, and 1 guidance counselor.
Oh, they are going to save one guy, or one is going to be eliminated.
Right,
correct? All
right.
So this-
So that was part of the, in closing and consolidating the 2 schools, we saved $500,000.
Okay, all right.
And that's what a lot of it was in those positions.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Line number 17, transportation for sped students on the munis budget.
Yep.
And that's $2,079,000. Is there any state reimbursement for any of that?
No.
Wow. All right, that's,
Now, what we just did, though, is, remember my talking about the $600,000 in ARRA? I moved $600,000 of that into that grant. So I reduced that. That was part of balancing the budget.
hold on. Online, and I'm just taking a school, and I believe it was Crocker, line 205, and really what it is, you have an amount under faculty. And then you have another line for ELD faculty, another line under SPED faculty, and another line under kindergarten faculty, all in the same school. Is the ELD, the SPED, and kindergarten faculty...
Learning disabled.
All right, oh, I know. But
Yep.
is that over and above the amount of faculty listed in line 205?
Yes, each of these is a separate amount, yes.
Okay, but all coming under, they're not part of any grants then?
No, no.
Okay.
Anything in the munis budget is part of the city budget.
Okay.
There's no grant in any of the munis budget. That's totally separate.
Okay. And just a few more, and I know that the other councilors. One, or 2 questions. Are there any cost assessed for anybody playing any sport? Because I know that many, okay, oh, good.
Yeah, we
Or
have
not
a
good, but I
fee.
guess.
We have a fee, it's minimal, and the problem is, we have so many people, so many kids who are not able to pay, that we try to raise money, and there are ways to try to meet the fees. But I think it would be fair to say, we don't turn anybody away. If we have a kid who wants to play ball and they can't afford it one way or another, we figure out a way for them to play ball.
And I think that's very admirable, and if they raise private money or and all that, or a cookie or a bake sale or whatever, but for it to come out of the city of Fitchburg, if somebody who just wants to play 5 sports, I mean, pardon me, in fairness, and other people are going to be laid off, or we're not going to have items going into the police, to the fire, or whatever, or even the school department, shouldn't there be some time where you tell a student, I'm sorry, I really feel bad, but you can only play one for free. You can't play five. You may want to play five, but you can't.
Yeah, I don't think we have anybody playing five, or even three, and I know that we struggle to put some teams together. And we've actually been helped out. The police department runs a track program for us, and they put together a football program for us, which we weren't able to do, but we would be even in tougher shape without the PALS program. We have so many kids. So I would say, and also, we have a revolving account that is money from, Gates and the Booster Club and all of that. So that's where we go to find the $50 or whatever we have to pay for a kid to play sport.
So it doesn't come out of the
No.
school? All right,
No,
that's fine.
no.
Thank you.
If
One
you
last
look at the
question.
athletic account, you'll see that it's just a few salaries and the coaching stipends,
right.
pretty much, that's it.
All right. One last question. I know that Counselor Caddy had mentioned maybe about 5 months ago, there was an issue of people who have retired from the school department, who come back per diem. And I know the same names always seem to pop up, and I know that each of us get, questioned by a lot of residents.
Yep.
And I know it may be grant money, but would you explain, because I think that's a sore spot. If it's many people, when they hear that, they retire on 80% of their pay and then come back at $500 a day per diem.
I think one of the things that happens, and it's done by all school systems, is you're hiring the expertise, not the person. It's really hard to find people who can step in to fill in whatever it is that you need at a particular time. And when it's a retiree, they're coming in, there's no training, there's no learning curve. They're able to do the work. So it's a traditional practice of school systems to hire former school people to come in, and just like the police department wouldn't hire a teacher to come in and do security duty or something like that. So, yeah, that is the case. Under the retirement laws right now, retirees are able to earn a certain amount, but they can only earn a certain amount. Once they earn that amount, that's it. It's not like the retiring stuff that we've been reading about in the paper, where you work one day and you get another year in your pension. So that is a practice. It's probably my special education director, for example. When I lost mine, and before I got the new one, I hired a former retired special education director, because there's litigation, there's all kinds of law, and you have to understand the SPED laws. I can't just hire anybody off the street to fill that gap. So where we go is to retirees. So yes, that is what happens, and it's usually based either on, or it's for a short assignment of some activity that needs to be done.
I'd like to, Councilor Solomito, just on that point, I think the spirit of your question is there waste? Are we spending money that we shouldn't be spending?
I apologize, because that really wasn't my spirit of the question. I apologize.
But relative to who you hire to get a job done, it's incumbent upon the superintendent to get the job done in as efficient manner as possible. And I don't want people to get the wrong impression when you hear, the words that, it's practice to hire retirees. What's really practice is to get the best job done as fast as possible for the best cost. When you kind of throw that criteria out there, you end up looking at people who need to know the system, you need to operate quickly, and so you turn to someone who's experienced, and not only experienced in the role, but experienced in the school system. And when you put that criteria together, retirees kind of come front and center in terms of the best choice possible to get the job done. So I would say that it's really kind of the circumstances that drive it, and these are typically done for a short period of time to accomplish, a mission. It's not to re-employ somebody. It's to get something done that can't be done because everyone else has got a job to do.
All right, but that's all the question I have. Thank you.
Councilor Conry.
Yes, I have a follow-up to what Councilor Di Natale brought up earlier regarding additional personnel when people are being laid off, and quite satisfied with the answer that was given that at least 4 teaching positions were going to be added that are needed. The concern I have is the Assistant Supervisor of Maintenance. I've heard some rumblings, and I was going to ask that question. I would hope that if we are laying people off in the school department, laying police and firefighters off, that we do not create any new positions in the city of Fitchburg. The question I have, if we are laying, either downsizing or laying off 2 custodians at B.F. Brown, a school which is closing, and we are going to close one of the wings at South Street, why is it necessary that we hire an assistant supervisor of maintenance?
Well, the functions are totally different. The work that's been designed and the work, that job evolved out of the work of the Building Needs Subcommittee and out of the growing demand that we've had for facility maintenance, HVAC. The amount of time my business manager and I spend taking care of old facilities is incredible. And a lot of the work that needs to be done is not cleaning. It's very heavy-duty, serious work around HVAC, oil tanks, roof repairs, and all of that. With that said, right now, the way this budget is, with no furlough, I can't see that there's going to be any new position that's going to survive all of this.
Well, if I could just...
And yet, if there is a way that something needed to survive, I would say that's an area where we are in dire need of expertise.
If I could speak to the origins of that, the idea for the position was actually brought forward by myself from previous experience that I've had in trying to run the GE facility, where I realized that when I hired a facility manager, I was saving many, many times more a year than that position cost. And we also, I also heard from counselors, from the public, from school officials, that we were spending a lot of money on our schools, the capital projects for the schools, and that maintenance had dropped. I had heard that because maintenance dropped at the schools, the capital expenditures came much more quickly and to the tune of 6 figures a piece, 7 figures a piece, multiple times a year before the city. And I'd heard grumblings from non-school city people that said, the city ends up picking up the cost for capital items that could have been prevented by maintenance of which is 100% net school spending qualified. So I think the last thing that we should do is to balk at a net school spending qualified position of maybe $50,000 to $75,000 a year, including expenses and so on. That could potentially save us probably initially hundreds of thousands a year of costs that would be borne by the city, maybe preventing million-dollar breaks, maybe prolonging multi-million-dollar investments by 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So I am, I don't like that this argument is being shaped as we might not have the money to fund this position. Frankly, the less money you have, the less we can afford to not fund this position. Everything that we see in our schools has been a result of lack of maintenance. We should be pushing for something like this. We should be pushing for ways to do things differently so that we can prevent the city from having to pick up a lot of capital costs. So I look forward to having this type of expertise come on board. I would hope that we can find a way to maintain this position.
May I follow up?
A few months ago, the superintendent and myself came before this committee seeking a $450,000 loan, primarily to address maintenance issues. We took several questions from counselors with regards to the boiler repair at the high school, the 7-year-old boiler repair, 7-year-old boiler that required over $100,000 repair. That is clearly one instance where had we had somebody full-time staying on top of what was going on, that repair could have been averted or made at year 15 versus year 7. You know, Bill Barletta and myself have gone through several schools trying to make these systemic improvements. And in our maintenance department, we have the current maintenance supervisor. We have then 32 custodians. So there is no maintenance person. The last maintenance person that I was aware of was laid off several years ago, primarily in response to declining budgets. Well, that's come back to bite us. And now it's like the Fram Oil commercial. You can pay me now or pay me later. Well, we're paying later and we're paying more. So one of the things that we have done over this past year is try to make some real proactive measures to address these legacy facilities issues, and I'll talk about it later in the presentation, is address some of these, you know, just core envelope and infrastructure issues to keep our kids, you know, dry, safe, and warm. So, you know, it's something that I know it's in the budget. We've heard questions from people, but, you know, we're on the front page quite a bit, frankly, for facilities issues. So this is one way we can address the quality of the facilities and improve the image of the system.
Just to follow up, I think a study was done several years ago regarding the conditions of the schools. The report was submitted. It's on my own personal opinion, but you do have a supervisor of maintenance, and the concern I have is, where has he been? You've had that report probably 5-6 years ago, before I was on the city council, and some of those conditions still exist.
I couldn't even begin to tell you where this gentleman has been. He can barely take vacation. When he's on vacation, he's on the phone most of the time, because I deal with one facility crisis after another in this city. My buildings are in terrible shape. My roofs are leaking. My boilers aren't working. And one person is in charge of making all of that. I talk to him in the middle of the night. I talk to him on weekends. He's always on call. And he's also somebody who rolls up his sleeves. And when he saved us so much money. I think I already stated that here. We were this close to not having school at, was it Crocker Rheingold? At Rheingold. Almost close.
Crocker, Rheingold, BF,
but that one time, I almost had to close the school for the rest of the year because the boiler gave out. We brought in 2 companies, and we spent a day trying to get the boiler up. This was in the wintertime. And it was Bill Barletta on his vacation, when we contacted him, that said, go to Crocker. I think there's a part, and I don't remember, vacuum something or other. Take it from Crocker and bring it over to Rheingold. That's what we did, and we got the boiler going again.
And saved us $20,000.
And saved $20,000. So if there's any employee in this city who I wonder what he does, and does he earn every penny, my maintenance person would be the last one. You know, I just check every day to see if he's there. Because some days, I don't know why he gets up in the morning and comes. Because it's one full day of one facility maintenance problem after another. And on no budget. You know, on rubber bands and duct tape. Duct tape, you know, does just about everything. Gorilla tape even does a better job. But, you know, I think so often administrators, quote unquote, are, unless they're visibly seen working with their hands on a daily basis, the assumption of the public is they're not doing anything. Well, I can tell you, from my point of view, all the ones that work for me and work for the Fitchburg Public Schools are not doing that. They're working every minute of the day, and they are doing this city very well by the money that's spent on them.
I'd like to add to that, just to speak from the school committee's position. I think that your question, Counselor, is absolutely fair. At the same time, I will also say to you that the work that Mr. Barletta and his team have done has been phenomenal. We all recognize that there's been some challenging weather issues this year. There were, instances that, quite frankly, just don't make the papers because it gets dealt with. And, that really speaks to the commitment of Mr. Barletta and his team. And I think I can speak for all the school committee in saying that we think he's done a fantastic job. But I think that what you're also talking about is, wasn't there a recipe? Therefore, kind of wasn't it easy? And what I would like to say is that that recipe didn't speak to the day-to-day activities that Mr. Barletta has been involved in. That list that was done so comprehensively, maybe 2 years ago or so, really represented items of a capital nature. Items that said, we have to go spend big money. Where would you spend big money based on what we know today? And, we were speaking of roofs and of this and of that. And it was very comprehensive, and that work was certainly well done. But I would kind of characterize that as primarily capital in nature. I think that Mr. Jokla intends to speak to some of the capital items. Mr. Jokla, question? So the answer, yep, yes. But I think that when we think about Mr. Barletta's work over the past year, albeit sometime invisible, and oh, by the way, that's the way you want it, it's really been on more expense type of items, just kind of keeping, the schools going.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Avenel, I guess we'll start with your office. I see an increase in $16,351, line 19. With your office.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That would be myself and the assistant.
It's under the administrative.
Right, yeah, I don't have the detail on what that is.
All right, well, let's hopefully you can find us an answer later on. Staff development, going up 44%, $44,000. What's the, as far as, what's the purpose of that?
Well, the staff development, actually, I should probably have Mr. Russo speak to that, since he's the school committee member who's really focused on, what we're providing for staff development. That's actually a line that, in most cases, we put it in at 55, and it gets reduced to almost zero. This year, based on our strategic plan and what we're looking at, that's one of the reasons it's been increased. But, Paula?
Well, we've had the State Department of Education provide us with a 5-year coordinated program review, and there are a number of mandated professional development activities required as a result, and they include very specific legal, special ed, regular ed, it's called response to intervention oriented professional development activities for 100% of the staff in such areas as the district curriculum accommodation plan, response to intervention, special ed inclusion, curriculum accommodation modification laws, and the average day for training, hiring, whether it's consultants or planning ourselves, averages between $3,000 and $5,000 a day. And those are all mandated requirements as a result of the coordinated program.
So these, the professional development days are not run by staff within the system, it's outside?
No, they could be run by our staff during the day, but the magnitude of professional development for 100% of the staff, not just cohorts of teachers, may require additional fees for consultants. It's very specialized training. The restraint training, for example, for teams per building has to be conducted by certified trainers, and for those we usually have to contract out. We have a couple in-house, but to provide that on the wholesale numbers for the district is fairly expensive.
When you're talking about restraint training, you talking about just, now that's an example of something I imagine would be part of the special ed program.
It's
Or is that actually, or is that system-wide now?
System-wide.
How long has that been system-wide?
About 3 years.
Okay. Actually, that's a good program, because I'm sure, well, since, and I'll get to that later, because you don't have a school resource officer funded. As I continue with your office, also an increase in substitutes.
The substitute account is always overrun. This year, we're putting money into it to try to not overrun it, and the biggest thing that we get hit with is, it's not the day-to-day substitute, but if somebody goes out on long-term illness, that person gets paid and you have to cover the substitute. And that's where huge costs incur. And we have no control over that. We don't know how many people are going to get cancer or have some sort of surgery that they have to have. So that all comes out of that account. And so for the 800 employees, it's covering those who need a substitute for long-term illness. The biggest chunk of that are people who are out on long-term illness. And we've talked about putting it school by school, but the problem with that is you can't predict which school is going to have the illness that's going to need the long-term sub. So that's why we keep the whole amount in the central office. So if a school has 3 people that are on long-term illness, we've covered the substitute costs.
Would that also maternity leave too? Was that, are you also including maternity leave? Is that part of
Maternity,
what?
right,
Okay.
yeah, and paternity. So if somebody is out on paternity leave, you also cover that.
Okay. I'm going down to special ed. It's line 507. And I noticed a 25% increase in the SPED team leaders, almost $124,000.
Now, this is, and Mr. Reynolds just reminded me of this, is the budget you're looking at, the multi-paged budget, does not have the reductions of the 1.7 million. So if you remember when I was talking earlier, the 2 ELTs were moved out of the city budget into a grant, there they are. You just identified them. So all of those positions that are that have been moved out to make the $1.7 million in cuts, in this multi-page, I have not changed the multi-page document yet, which is why you got that one-page cover. Because until we know how this all shakes down, we can't move them out. So, for example, the 2 ELTs, they'll now, when we redo the munis budget, once we know who's RIFT and who's not, those positions will get moved out. So that the number that now says is a total 46 will say 43.3.
All right. I think I understand where you're coming from.
No, do you have another, I can clarify it if it's not clear.
No, that actually did make that clear.
Because the ETLs were a good one to choose, because that's one I mentioned, and I can say those 2 went into a grant.
Okay. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about your athletic budget. Nothing against the athletic director. He's a fantastic guy. He's a fantastic coach. But let me ask you, is there a real need in the system for a full-time athletic director? And basically, what are some of his administrative jobs that he has within the system?
Well, my answer is yes. If it's still in the budget, it's because I and the team felt that it's an important position. We've added additional responsibilities to his position. We've cut another administrator who used to be the truant officer. You have to have a truant officer by law. So I've added that role, and luckily for me, you have to have a degree in psychology to be a truant officer, and our athletic director has one. So he's now going to be our athletic director and truant officer, and has a lot of other things that he does in the district, has helped out with the health curriculum. When the nice thing about having some administrators is that pretty much they'll do whatever you assign them to do. So when I lost my truant officer and needed to have one by law, I was able to say, I'd like to add this to your job, and that's going to be added to the athletic director's job next year.
Okay. There's also an increase in that salary. I was
The athletic director is part of Unit B. Unit B is the administrative unit. They have a contract, and for next year, they have a negotiated increase of 2%. And right now, I think Unit B, is there another unit that has a negotiated increase? I think that's it. And the clerical. Right now, the only two unions that have a negotiated increase in their contract for next year are Unit B, the administrators, and the clerical.
Okay. Also,
And furlough would affect that, correct?
you have a reduction in the coaching salaries. Why is that?
That I would be based on what the athletic director gave me. So if he looked at his projected salaries and what he's doing for next year, and
Are there eliminations of any sports?
I don't think so. I think what he did talk about was possibly some cutting back on some competitions that were in the budget this year that he felt he would not recommend participating in next year. Extended competitions, which also add to transportation costs.
I understand that. I just didn't know. It seems like I know one of the basketball coaches was basically funded through a fundraiser. Yet, a couple people asked me, for instance, football, I believe, has 8, 9 coaches within the whole freshman through varsity. It just would have been easier if it was broken down a little bit, just going through this individual coaching salaries for what sports. I understand that football probably generates the most money for the athletic department. How much would that be, roughly?
That would be in the revolving account?
Yeah, that would be in the revolving account. I don't have that number offhand.
You don't have that number, okay. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the kindergarten program. Is it true that the paraprofessionals within the kindergarten program are having their hours reduced from 6 hours to 4 hours?
Correct, yes.
Any other paras within the system having that done also, or is it just?
All paras.
All paraprofessionals?
All paraprofessionals.
And that's to?
They're all part of a contract.
Okay.
So everyone in that contract. Now, with that said, there are some IEPs, some individual education plans that call for a one-on-one para for the full 6 hours. Those particular paras will have 6 hours because it's mandated by the special education IEP. So that's actually added a big wrinkle to our employment for next year because we now will have to open up those jobs for everybody to look at because it's for additional salary. So everyone would have an opportunity to apply, but it might also call for some very specific training that some paras might have.
You brought up a good, talking about the paraprofessionals. How many students within the system, and I'm familiar with an IEP, I've written plenty, how many students within the system have the one-to-one?
I don't know that off the top of my head. That would be the special ed director would be able to tell you. I don't. I can get that answer for you.
All right, and kind of following up a little bit with special ed, you talked about, I believe the term, it was on that handout. Excuse me for a second here. The term you used was the circuit breaker. Okay, now those are students that are sent off to individual facilities elsewhere. I'm tied in with No Child Left Behind. Your average school spending per student is $5,200, roughly $5,300 a student. What's the average for one of these students?
$35,000.
$35,000. How many different facilities are they going to? I know transportation's a huge part. Are any of them actually put up in boarded?
Yes.
How many?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Getting back to revenue, you mentioned the alternative ed graduation. Is there any tuition coming in from any of these other schools, such as school choice? I know a lot of kids that live in Fitchburg, school choice out. What about money coming in for the alternative ed from outside systems?
Every student who comes to Alt Ed from another school system, the school choice dollars follows them. And that's about 40% of the students at Alt Ed are from other school districts. We had 30 that graduated that are from Leominster.
30? I noticed when I saw it in the paper, kids from many other systems, and that's
I
something
mean,
I want to make
it
sure.
amazes me. It was 24 other towns send their students to our alt ed program.
All right. And last thing I'm going to ask you, at least now, unless I think of something else. Technology. I'm looking at line 690. Wait, was that? An increase of almost $90,000. What kind of new technology do we have in the system?
Well, one of the things is the data gathering that I talked to you about, X2, we were doing that and paid for that. We paid for the installation of that through a settlement from Microsoft, and then we've had there's an ongoing, I want to say 22,000, or what's the ongoing cost? 55. It's 22 is Connect Ed. 55,000 a year. And so that's part of our budget now to maintain that. And the data system is not just for our own use. All this talk you've been hearing in the paper and in the news about Cognos is the data system for the Department of Education. So we needed to ramp up in this in order to connect in to Cognos now, because all data is going to be tracked statewide. So a big chunk of that extra money is for providing the license for X2 for data and for data system.
I'm confused though, because it's listed under technology support salary. It sounds like it's staffing.
Oh yeah, no. So the 89.
690, line 690.
But that's not just that. So what else would it be? Part of that would be, there's a new position in here for the ITS.
Yeah, there's a network
right here.
person that we're going to
The
have.
IT technician.
I thought
That's part of it. That's now been, right, because this hasn't been adjusted yet. We've moved that position out into a grant. So a lot of
that
it,
another example of.
like the ETLs.
All right.
When you look at, on May 8th, my budget was reduced by over $1 million. On May 13th. On May 8th, it was reduced another $1 million. That's only less than a month ago. This was all done and ready to go with all of the staffing and everything in it. Now we need to go back, which is why I gave you the summary. Now we'll need to go back, and every single one of these lines, positions will be moved out. Either they're being reduced and it's a RIF, or they're being moved into a grant. And when all of that is done and takes place, the bottom line will be 43.3. And the IT person is one of those positions.
All right. I actually have a comment. A couple months ago, Fitchburg State College had a forum, a workshop, basically. Councilor Caddy and I attended. And I sat at a table with Rich Marchand from Leominster, who happens to teach in the Shrewsbury school system. And he told me about a program that they have within the system, that it's a graduation requirement for students to do community service. I don't think there's anything like that exists, or is there, other than the alternative ed?
No. We have a full community service program at the high school and a full internship. 3 weeks ago, there was a huge celebration, I think the mayor attended, of 24 of our high school students who've spent the whole year working in a local Fitchburg business. That's not counting the dozens and dozens of students that are out there doing community service on a daily basis, on a weekly basis.
The only reason it makes me think is a couple months ago we started cleaning up Cogswell, and I had contacted you, and I know you had sent out a letter to every, or gotten a letter out to the high school kids. We're looking for as many bodies as possible. Councilor Caddy, I don't recall seeing one single Fitchburg High student show up. And I was a little discouraged by that. I know when I was at Fitchburg High, we had Fitchburg East Rotary, and they had Interact, and a big part of that program was community service, along with stuff that the student council and class officers had done in the school system. It was really discouraging, especially now that my job, I end up seeing so many products of the school system coming through. It seems that they have very little pride in their city. and I was really hoping to see a little more involvement in some of the other things that have taken place within the city. It was really discouraging. We weren't, I know in the past, a lot of the athletic teams have taken part and done something. Times are difficult, and I truly understand that. I just would like to see the kids a little more involved in their community, taking a little more pride in their community. I guess that's it for now.
Councilor Starr,
Yes.
I feel compelled to respond to
Oh, absolutely.
part of your statement. I think that I think it's true that some things that the students do, you can't see it. But I would also say, just because you can't see it, doesn't mean that it's not happening. So I know that there are a lot of things that are happening that, in terms of the types of community involvement that you're looking for, evidence for, it is happening. Could it happen more? Absolutely. Should it be a topic of discussion, and should that bar always be high, and should there be no finish line? Absolutely. But, we shouldn't finish tonight thinking that nothing's happening, because point in fact, there's a lot happening. And, also then to go and make the leap just because we can't see it, if we feel then that, therefore there's no pride in the city of Fitchburg by our students, I wouldn't make that connection, because I think that there is a lot of pride by the students of Fitchburg. And it gets evidence in different ways. Again, no finish line on that topic. Could always be more, could always be better, and we should all hope for that. But I would just tell you, not only as a school committee member, but as a parent who's got 3 kids in the system, that I don't go to bed at night saying there is no pride in the city of Fitchburg from the students.
I would expect, especially, obviously, your children and many others to be involved. And I'm aware that a lot of good deeds go unnoticed. That happens everywhere. It happens all the time with the individuals sitting in this circle right here. But I was not aware of any type of program other than the stuff that the students in the alternative ed did. And I was discouraged, to say the least, to have all those kids from Monty Tech up there. And it was publicized plenty. And I contacted other teachers up at the high school to not have any kids come down on a Saturday. I wasn't aware of any type of community service program that was a high school requirement for graduation, like I learned from the Shrewsbury system. It's the reason I asked. I'm definitely not pointing a finger at anybody. I just think that there's always more that can be done.
Absolutely.
There's always more that can be done.
Yep.
And we have a lot of changing times now, and it's very difficult. And I get discouraged on a daily basis when I'm seeing kids that I had in class coming through the door, coming through the bars every single day. And a lot of them are from Fitchburg, and we're talking about 17 to 25-year-olds. And it's very discouraging. But I appreciate your answer, Jim. Thank you. That's all.
Councilor DiMartino.
Superintendent, you said that you wrote 140 letters. That's a horrible thing to do. And will they get unemployment during the summer?
Hopefully not. Our goal is, well, some will, but our goal is going to be to call back as many into empty positions as we can before the end of the school year. For example, all the paras are going to receive a RIF letter, because the assignments for most of those have to be made based on IEPs. So over the next week, they're going through the IEP, and the goal will be to assign as many as we can. So yes, a number of those will be receiving unemployment.
Will some of them who will get unemployment, will they be called back some next year?
Yes. Many of them will be.
Who pays that unemployment?
The city pays.
The city, is that?
City does, but we do pass on that charge to the school
To
department.
the school?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. You said that 4 years ago, the dropout rate is 50% less now. What was it 4 years ago?
It's on this sheet, If you look at 2003 to 2004, it was 9.6. Then it went down to 7.9, 6.5, 5.9, and this year, or 2007, 2008, 4.2. So it's dropped from 9.6 to 4.2.
What were the actual numbers, though?
Well, right now, 4.2 represents 54 students out of 1,286. So I would turn to my mathematician, and I don't, so we'd have to look at what was the enrollment in 2003 and 2004, and then, you know, do the numbers from there.
What is the dropout rate of the alternative school?
Probably, I think it's in maybe around 20% or so. It's probably quite high.
I thought it was higher.
It might, I don't have that number in front of me right now, but it might be. I would expect that.
I was told it was 45%. Is that possible?
No.
So 35 might be a good number.
I don't know, but it's on actually the Department of Education, because the alternative school is a separate high school of its own,
Yeah,
so it would have its own statistics.
Now, when you do the billing, when you get the money for each child, what month in the year do you get that money?
It's quarterly, I think. The school choice money comes in quarterly.
The revenue comes in, the first payment for you would be in December, March, and then June.
So it's 3 times.
3 quarters.
Okay, December. So if I'm in the school and the January I drop out, so I'm there until that, where does that money go? Do you keep that money, or do you have to turn that money back to the state?
We only get it for the amount of time that they're in the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm 16 and I drop out of your school, but I go to the alternative school. Do I bring that money with me?
No. The money only comes from other school districts outside of Fitchburg.
So I'm from Fitchburg and I drop out and I get a chance to go to the alternative school. Who pays for me?
Fitchburg continues to pay for you.
And you take that bill? You pay for that? But where do you get that money?
It's not a bill, because it's one of our schools.
I know, but where do you get that money to pay for that
It
student?
would be the same money that if he had stayed. So we had already budgeted that student, so now instead of paying for him at
In one
Fitchburg High,
school.
we're paying for him at the alt-ed school.
And then 3 months later, he or she drops out. Then there's no money for that child? Or do you keep that money for that particular 3 months? You know what I'm saying? You keep the money?
Drops out and leaves the school system?
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
the money stays in the school system.
Okay.
Yes.
I could,
Yes.
actually, the calculations for the funding are based on our October 1st enrollment, and then we submit enrollment updates on December 1st, March 1st, and at the end of June. And the calculations for your reimbursements from the state are readjusted based on periodic examinations of those data. So they may give us an October 1st calculation,
Yeah.
and then readjust it for the end of the year. And the sped reimbursement numbers are adjusted, I believe, on the March 1st enrollment
And
date.
actually, those are a year off.
And those are a year off. It's
So-
for
so-
last year that we
So the money we're
retroactive.
receiving right now is not based on the students that are here now, it's based on the number of students we had last year on October 1st. It's 1 year behind.
Okay. You get a lot of transient population coming in with the programs that we have in Fitchburg, and they come in from other areas totally, and a lot of them have some severe needs. Do you get the money from that school transferred to your school?
If the child continues to live in the other district, the answer is yes. If the child moves to Fitchburg, the answer is no. If the child moves to Fitchburg, the other district has no responsibility to them. But if the child continues to live in another community and comes to Fitchburg as school choice, the other district pays for them.
Okay. Okay. And my pet project, textbooks. How are we doing with textbooks?
Paula, I think I'll hand this question off to you.
We have materials money in every school budget. It's never enough. But what more and more we're doing is actually using digital media. And, I mean, there are now districts across the country that are examining digital media as replacement. Textbooks are extremely expensive, even used textbooks. Most of our principals do not buy new textbooks, they buy used books. But a lot of our programs really use digital. They use primary source media from the internet, there are museums, resources at the national, at the federal, and international level that people can now access, which is why technology is so important. Although we are examining text-related materials. We're piloting supplementary reading materials at the elementary that are science books. They actually teach science but through a reading model. It's called Roots of Reading, Seeds of Science, developed by the University of California at Berkeley. And we do provide a lot of grant funding for those. Again, that's one of the approved investment opportunities that we can pay for out of grants. So we do provide some money in our building-based budgets. We look for digital resources to really round out the experience, and then we use grant funds to support some really top-notch text-based materials.
I felt
we could always use more.
I felt I had to ask that. This is my last time to ask you, and I ask you every year, or I ask the people every year. The kindergarten has been discussed, so I won't talk about that. One other thing that I was wondering about, the grants that you are going to be paying teachers under, will they be more vulnerable under the grants because the grants may come back or they may not? Are you putting them in a vulnerable position, and are they aware of that when they take that on? And will they have bumping rights if the grants go?
Yes, two things. They're aware of it because the letter says it. Everyone who gets a letter of a position and they're in a grant says it's dependent on the funding of the grant. And if they're part of the school system, they maintain their seniority. So whether they're being paid out of a grant or not, if they're part of the Teachers Association, they maintain their seniority.
And what's the percentage of the children below poverty going to our school? Or at the poverty level?
District-wide, it's about 54%. Some of our schools are as high as 80%, and I think the lowest is, it might be one of our small schools might be as low as 45, but most of, even our high school is about 50%.
And what's the percentage of the free lunch the children are getting?
That's it.
Thing?
Yeah, it's about 65, 66.
Yeah.
65? Thank you very much. That's all.
Councilor Di Natale.
And the topic of transportation costs, are we aware of any districts in Massachusetts that have restrictions on grade levels for transportation? For example, high school students, there's no busing.
Gardner.
Is that something that the school committee and the administration and the schools have looked at? Because that number is a concern to me because it's almost $5 million. And that number keeps going up, and we don't get reimbursed at all for it. So I guess I asked the question because I don't think it's very unreasonable to have high school students find their own way to school, although I know that there might be some ramifications for making such a drastic change. But when I hear that other school districts are doing it, has that been looked at? And is that going to be pursued as a major cost-saving measure down the road to curb this?
Well, let me start. It was looked at, and it would not be practical at all here in Fitchburg. I get people complaining of the few people who have to walk on Ashby State Road to get to the high school as it is, let alone sending the whole high school population there on their own merit. I've never been to the Gardner High School, but my understanding is it has a more central location than our high school does. Personally, as superintendent, it is not something that I would promote, because also we're held accountable for one of the measures for AYP, whether your high school makes AYP, is attendance. I think our attendance would take a beating if we didn't have transportation. The reason we came up with the cut the 5 buses is because we looked at all those other things. And as we were looking at it, we realized that if we consolidated some routes, we could save 5 buses, which seemed to be a better solution than telling our whole high school population that they, had to get to the high school on their own.
I think that needs to be articulated, that the location of the school is kind of a roadblock because it's way out in the outskirts. It's not like where the academy, the old high school used to be located. That would have been a lot easier. About school building maintenance and capital improvements and the talk about the assistant maintenance manager, the current maintenance manager, head maintenance manager, it is a blow to the city of Fitchburg every time the media grabs hold of issues regarding the buildings, because that gets advertised in the press, and that's seen as purely negative and poor. And that is our fault. That is just another example where common sense has eluded executive management in this city for over 30 years, why they think that they can put up a building and think that it's immune to issues regarding infrastructure. We are at a point where our buildings are abhorrent, and we didn't hire you to be a maintenance person. And I know you deal with those issues more than you want to. And I've said it before, and I understand that we have a capital commission that's being formed, but there is no way around this. We are going to have to borrow money, and we're going to have to borrow substantial amounts. We are not going to get an infusion of cash for capital improvements, because that's how you fund capital, cash on hand. We don't have it. I think the current building maintenance director has done a fantastic job. I witnessed his actions during the December ice storm, how involved he was. And it should be noted also that, the school system was integral in aiding us in harboring a lot of city residents, such as Memorial and Rheingold. My number one priority for the school district is the infrastructure. That's number one for me. And I will be expecting, and I understand that we will be being asked to do another bond order for the roof repairs or new roof, but we can't avoid it anymore, and I hope this is a reminder to everybody why we need a yearly maintenance plan, because you let something go for 40 years, it's going to come crashing down on you, and every time I read a story about the roofs leaking, I cringe, because that is stuff that the press loves to get a hold of. I don't think that there's I don't think that there's enough positive information coming out about how well our school district performs. I remember when I was on the school committee, I saw the AYP and MCAS results, and every category was improved. It didn't improve to the rate the state and the federal government wanted, but, them being the geniuses and everything, but we improved everywhere, and that was great to see. But how it was reported was we didn't meet AYP. So if we went from 60% to 70%, but the state said you have to be at 72, we failed, which is ridiculous. So we don't get credit for the 10% bump, we get chastised for the 2% difference. I know a lot of the faculty in the public school system, and I know they do a wonderful job. I'm a product of that school system, and I don't want to see those buildings deteriorate anymore. I can't imagine what it's like to work in that kind of an environment. I will also add that I am pleased that the school committee, especially the finance committee, has a more integral role in the budget-making process the last couple of years than many years past. I'm comfortable with what I see here, for the most part, because of that major collaboration. A lot more hands-on, and I understand that this is not just your budget, this is the school committee's, it's a collaborative effort, and I'm very pleased to see that, and that's it. Thank you.
Chapel?
I just want to, maybe this is the right time, just give a quick update in terms of facilities and hearing that it's your number one priority. When we came before the council a few months ago, looking for about $500,000 for some emergency repairs and also some land remediation expenses. I just want to give an update. About 75% of that work has been completed. Then about 25% of that remains to be done, and that'll be done over the summer months. As you mentioned, we'll be coming before, or a loan order will be coming before the City Council next Tuesday night for total of $1.1 million. $400,000 of that will be associated with making improvements to Crocker Elementary School, the boiler, replacing the boiler system, partial roof replacement, and replacing the windows. That $400,000 will be reimbursed 80% by MSBA. Okay, that's kind of the engineering design phase. And they'll help us assess what the total dollar amount of that project will be. It'll be in the millions. But again, that will all be 80% reimbursed as well. The new Longsjo Middle School roofs have been leaking for years, as well as memorials. Those roofs, we've just had numbers come back from architects, and we're ready to go forward to get that work done in the fall. Of course, we need the council's approval and blessing to do that. Okay.
So the 1.1 million will cover
the Crocker MSB at 400, and then 700 for the middle school roofs.
Now, are the roofs being repaired, or are they being completely, we're putting a new roof on?
There are portions of roofs that are being completely replaced.
Okay.
So we have that in the pipeline that we'll be bringing forth.
And I take it that's not the end of it?
No, then we still have boilers at schools. Andre mentioned the story of how, we were almost out of, one boiler almost broke down at Rheingold over the past year. We need new boilers at Rheingold and at Memorial. Myself and the city finance team have worked very closely over the last year, along with Bill Barletta and also the school administration cabinet, to identify which schools we keep open, which schools cost us a lot to operate, and also what schools are not operating efficiently. The city has helped us out in terms of getting some energy efficiency upgrades at the high schools and Rheingold already, and we're in the process of getting a new audit to help us look at energy efficiency at other schools. The city does a good job buying the commodity for us. We do a terrible job burning it efficiently, because we have 55-year-old, equipment trying to burn it, and it burns very inefficiently, along with breaking down. So these are things that we've spoken about at building needs. We've spoken about it with the finance team. Mentioned some of the challenges a few months ago, and you'll see us over the next few weeks, and probably back maybe in the fall again for something larger.
See, and if we do these things, then we will reduce the costs of maintenance, yearly maintenance, and reallocate those resources to other pressing needs. I mean, there's going to be a payback, obviously, and that's why we've got to get this done now, because we're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on patchwork. So this would really curb those expenses if we were to do these things. So
it'll definitely help. We're not immune to the rising prices of fuel.
Right.
But it'll help burn whatever fuel we're going to burn more efficiently, and we're pursuing all options to do that and to finance equipment at, I guess, the least possible burden to the city as well. So.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not to be an apologist, but I am aware of a lot of Fitchburg High students this weekend, and I believe in the past years been involved in the Walk for Cancer in Gardner. Many of the athletic teams are involved in that, quite a few. Also, I want to mention something about Bill Barletta, who I think does a tremendous job, and we're very, very lucky to have Bill Barletta here in Fitchburg. I'm very happy, Andre, that you presented us with this tonight. Sometimes I think that people in Fitchburg like to beat each other up, and we take a pretty good beating in this city, but when you see, full-day kindergarten, when you see an alternative ed program, 82% attending higher education colleges, dropout rate being cut to by 50%, all good stuff, and we've got to bring that stuff forward. We have to bring it forward. This is good stuff, so thank you. I do have my pet project as well, and it goes back to my days on the school committee and here at the council, and I've always thought that our schools have to be safe for our students and for faculty and for staff. To have a learning environment, you have to have a safe environment, or as safe as you can possibly be in these days that are changed so much over the years. That brings me to the question of a learning resource officer, or just safety in general in the schools. My guess is that the way things are with the police department and so forth, where, you know, the learning resource officer position probably isn't going to be in good shape. So my question is, how do you compensate for that?
It's a huge loss. You know, I've talked to the chief about this at all. It's a big concern of his. Right now, we have no financial plan to provide a resource officer. We have been part of a grant with Luck. It's a multi-million-dollar grant over number of years, and in that grant, we have put, I think, three resource officers, one at the high school and two at the middle schools. But it's a competitive grant. We'll hear sometime this summer. If we heard, it would be great, because it would actually provide 3 resource officers for at least 5 years. But other than that, you know, our own, we've got hall monitors at the Longeau School, where, you know, there'll be the principal, there'll be 2 assistant principals, there'll be 2 guidance counselors and a social worker. The structure that they're developing there is a house system into 2 separate groups, so breaking the school down into 2. A lot of safety has a lot to do with getting to know the students. And I think a lot of what we're trying to do, you know, the school committee has mandated responsive classroom as a discipline approach, not as so much discipline, but as a proactive approach to all of the schools now, next year. That's getting to know the students, talking to the students ahead of time, getting information. Safety is not just intervening when the violent act takes place. A lot of safety is, what are you providing to prevent the violent acts from taking place? So I think we're trying to provide those kinds of things, because we don't have the resources or the staff expertise to provide the kinds of things that a resource officer would provide.
I still do whatever I can to keep that in the forefront. We can have as many hall monitors as we want, but there's nothing like seeing a man or woman in blue. I think there's a different level of respect when students see that, and I think that's what we need. I would hate these numbers to change, and I think that having a resource officer like that only helps that learning environment. So I hope, and I'm sure that you will, work as hard as possible to see that we can get a learning officer at not only the high school, but our middle school as well. Thank you.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you. When you're talking about the high school, the school up there, the Academy Middle School, or Longtown, I'm sorry, it's always going to be the high school to me. Is the auditorium been closed down?
It's reopened. It was closed down because of the leaking roof. The leaking roof had caused deterioration to the ceiling under the balcony. We've repaired that, and which is why we're also fixing the roof. It's now not only, I've been a real stickler about that auditorium. I have a warm spot for that auditorium.
Warm spot for that whole building.
So I go in there and I see it the way it was the day it was built. And when I went into it, 3 weeks ago, there were 3 lights on. And I was told, well, that's all that there is. Well, now almost all the lights are on, they're all working, and I got an email from Bill Barletta today saying, all right, go to the Academy Auditorium now, you'll be thrilled. The only lights they haven't been able to get working are the little lights in the seats that light the aisles, which I think are the coolest ones that really make you think you're someplace special, and it's because the wiring is so deteriorated, it would be a fire hazard. So we're not going to do those. But all those beautiful round discs are all lit, the side lights are lit. We have plans to remove some of the seats under the balcony and use those to make every seat in the rest of the auditorium really look fantastic. We have ideas about painting the proscenium arch, cleaning, really getting to that. That's part of our Longeau opening in September. I'm really hoping that, There will be a day in September when we reopen that school as Lonjo, where we'll be proud to bring anybody to that auditorium. But we got to fix the roof, because all of this work is going to be for naught if, when the storm and the ice start again, it all starts to deteriorate.
And that is the same roof that exists over the entryway and over the gym.
Yes.
I played in a rec league basketball game 3 years ago for about 4 weeks. We had to play with a bucket in the middle of that gym floor. And again, flat roof, you're going to continue to have those types of problems. What about the stage over there with all the lighting that's built into the stage? Is that all functioning
The
again?
stage is all, the lighting on the stage is all functioning.
I thought I read that there was a lot of damage to the stage. No?
No, Memorial or Academy, which one are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about Academy.
No, the Memorial stage had damage, that had been fixed, and actually it's in pretty good shape right now. The Academy stage, the only thing with it is there used to be these boxes, I think, that opened up at the front of the stage with lighting. One of those, something heavy was on it and it's collapsed. That's just, can be fixed.
Okay.
The rest of the stage is just needs to be painted and spruced up. It doesn't have any water damage at all.
For any type of function, short of the high school, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Memorial was always the one.
Parking is going to be a problem. Parking is a sensitive issue. And if you have a function at the Academy Auditorium, I can tell you, you might even have problems with the transportation supervisor who lives across the street. But that's an issue.
And
You know,
I'm sure I
and
get phone calls on it.
it really is. It's an issue with all of our schools. Our schools were not designed for all of this traffic. They were not. Most of the schools were designed to be walk-to schools.
I like what you said. What do you think the likelihood of receiving that grant for 3 resource officers?
We're going to hear this summer.
All right, so you couldn't venture a guess at all?
No, it's a national competition, and they're only awarding 6 grants. But we write good grants here in Fitchburg.
Well, you gotta pay $100,000 a year for your grant writer, right? Or I saw that. I would hope so. You brought up the responsive classroom. Any kid that's graduated in the last 3 years, if they've started in Fitchburg Public School System, they've started from first grade on as part of the responsive classroom. Now, I believe the middle school uses a different term.
Circle of power and respect.
Okay. But it's along the same idea. Now, that doesn't exist in the high school, or is that kind of phased out?
It's something different. At the high school level, you begin to use things like restorative justice, peer mediation. It kind of takes on a little different approach.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking elementary school, and
Right.
I'm thinking the morning meeting, and what a crucial, important role that is every day. And I found that it throws kids off completely when you don't have that kind of structure. And I mean, that's like, you talk about the first 6 weeks of school, that's exactly what you do. But again, it makes me worried with the numbers that we're going to have. How many students will be at Academy?
730.
What did they have last year?
Between Academy and 400 at Academy and 150 at FAA, so 550. Memorial has about 680.
I just know that there's been problems with that age bracket with, and I hate to bring it up again, gangs. I'm really happy with the choice that you have as principal, who I know is going to be incredibly proactive, trying to eliminate these problems before they actually happen. I've spoken with him a few times. And one more request. BF Brown's closing down. I want my gym locker, if that's possible, please.
We're going to sell those, actually, and raise money for roof repairs.
I will be more than happy to shell out whatever to
We
have.
can't
my
raffle off a car, so we're going to have to come up with something else to raffle off.
You know what, though? That's a fantastic idea. I don't know if anybody else in this room went to that school. The best teachers I ever had in my life were in that school, and I could probably name 5 or 6, and I'm looking forward to going down Saturday, the open house. And I might even shed a tear, because those were 3 fantastic years. I'm going to miss that place. Counselor Solomito is thinking about his own time in middle school. But again, thank you for your answers.
Counselor DiMartino.
This is not a criticism now at all, but I want to bring something to your attention. I watch the school committee meetings, and I'm afraid not to watch. I doze off a little, but I'm afraid not to watch them because they go on for so long, and I'm afraid not to miss anything. And I know that I've been here for quite a long time, but I have never seen school committee meetings that have gone on for so long. And I was wondering, is there a chance you could, bring it down a little? It's only an observation. But I mean, one night alone, it was 4.5 hours. I mean, I'm like that, and I said, did I miss something?
No commercials.
And I went to sleep twice. I moved to Law and Order, and I come back, you're still there. And I'm wondering, is it necessary to have them that length? Because I'm afraid I might miss something, so I keep them on. And an awful lot long-winded. And I just thought, after 18 years, I can say that to you all. So maybe you'll take it under advisement not to keep us up half the night. Thank you very much. It's very transparent, you're trying, though.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. President.
Mr. Reynolds.
I would just like to say that I recognize that tonight was speaking to $43 million, and that's part of the city budget. And one of the things that we also spoke about was that in approving this budget, and I'm not naive, we all recognize that there's economic realities out there that are challenging, that, net school spending, we're going to be at what, Mr. Saracen?
12 million.
Will be around 96%.
Around 96%. So the point is, without really knowing what that, what that number is, why can't we get to 100%? And I think that as, an advocate for the children, and not speaking as an individual, but as the role in the school committee, one of the things that we're looking to you all for is to fund the schools at 100% of net school spending. Has to be said. I recognize that there's economic realities that challenge that statement. I know that there's choices that have to be made, but by the same token, wouldn't be doing my job if we didn't look you guys in the eye and say, what we need to be doing is funding the schools at 100% of net school spending. Thank you.
Sir.
Can I say something to that? Please?
Of course you can, Councilor DiMartino.
And I'm glad that you said that, but for 90,000, if my numbers are right, we can keep the senior center and the library open 4 days a week. And that's also a population that we have to look at. So I wouldn't want to leave here tonight unless I gave you that side of the argument.
And I don't disagree with you. That's you doing your job.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much.